I'm a designer, and I'm the Sandbox Craft Lead, and additionally, I've been the team lead for the Charlie Brown Redacted team that Nick's just mentioned.
Very exciting. We've got some cool stuff to check out. Now, actually, Dylan, you and I were talking a little bit about this. There's going to be a new event arriving with Act 3.
Yeah, this event
Yeah.
is free to all players. It's going to offer something for lower skill for folks that maybe want to start getting into some endgame content, and then it's also going to offer some things of higher difficulty. I don't want to steal too much thunder.
No, of course.
Yeah,
I mean,
let's tee it up.
Yeah, that allows us a chance to introduce it. Rodney, would you like to do the honors of introducing
The Rite of the Nine. Yes.
Rite of the Nine?
So Rite of the Nine is our new event that we've been working on.
Rite of the
I'm
Nine.
really excited about this. It is a limited time event that features our dungeons. 3 of our dungeons that are part of this event. That's going to be Prophecy, of course, because of the 9 associations, but also Spire of the Watcher and Ghost of the Deep. So these 3 dungeons, we've seen a lot of reaction, positive reaction to the contest modes for our new dungeons as they've come out. And we were thinking, what would it be like if we were able to go back to our older dungeons and experience that kind of level of challenge and see how things play out in these older dungeons with some tweaks and some tuning and some additional modifiers and things like that to really bring the challenge up to kind of
new
contest
stories
mode levels, right? So we're like, okay, we got this great set of dungeons. Let's really put the screws to our players and see what they can do in a hard mode for these dungeons.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, we were like, well, a lot of these dungeons, there's a lot of players out there that haven't gotten to experience them because they can be pretty intimidating. They are, mechanically a little more intense. They don't do a lot of hand-holding in the activity. And, they often require, or at least, incentivize you to play with other players, right? So we were thinking, what if we could take this event as an opportunity to introduce these classic dungeons to a whole new audience by way of what we're calling Explorer mode. And so basically we've got new stuff at the top end in Ultimatum mode. We've got new stuff for players, or new opportunities for players to learn the dungeons in Explorer mode. And then we have Eternity mode, which is sort of aimed at our middle-of-the-road experienced dungeoneers. So we've kind of got something for everybody.
Excellent, awesome. Well, we've got stuff to actually show live right here. Tell you what, why don't you guys tell us just a little bit about where we're at right now?
Sure. We're going back to
this
this area.
is the social space for the event. Eagle-eyed veterans might notice that this is the 3rd Spire social space. It was originally used for the Trials of the Nine PvP event. But it's been a while. It's been since year 1 since you could go to this space. So we're bringing it back for the Rite of the Nine event. You can see off in the distance there as our brave/reckless guardian runs off into the horizon. You can see, there we go.
It's a death but an intrepid one at that, so.
You can see the Spire of the Watcher tower off in the distance. That's indicating that during the week that we have this set for, Spire is the featured dungeon. So there's going to be one of these 3 dungeons featured during each week of the event on a sort of rolling basis.
Okay, So here we're obviously this is a familiar face as well. What are some of the things we're going to be able to get up to here? Obviously, thank you, Gemini. We appreciate the introduction.
So the Emissary is our vendor, and the Emissary offers you quests, bounties, rewards, a wide variety of things to do during the event. Like I say, it's all dungeon focused, but we're going to be leading you into those dungeons and giving you rewards for beating them on the various difficulty levels.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, I believe I see some weaponry here in the background.
Yes.
What are we looking at here?
So for this event, we have taken 4 of the weapons from each of the featured dungeons and given them a big revamp. We've redone their perk pools, introduced perks that have come in over the season since the dungeon was released, and put those into these weapons and really given them a good juicing up as far as the perks that are available. And what you're sort of seeing here is the ability to attune to these various weapons, just like you could during Into the Light with the light weapons, so that if there's a particular one of these that you really are hunting a certain role, you can attune to it, get more drops of that weapon during the course of the event.
Very exciting. Okay, that's again, we see some fans obviously in the house here. So we've got, as you were mentioning, Ultimatum mode. We can go ahead and talk a little bit about later. But as we noticed, Spire the Watchers here. Nix, can you tell us a little bit about Explore mode and how you guys kind of built that and what that process was like?
Yeah, playtesting for Explorer mode was truly so cute because it required us to find people in studio who had never played dungeons before.
Yeah.
And that means we sourced folks from all corners, all levels, and made them equal in the name of a dungeon. So it was really great to see them go through our dungeons and having us tune it so that by the end of our playtest series, I think they just grew into folks who were really quite adept at dungeons.
Yeah.
And I want to say can go on to even solo them if they wanted to.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great starting point. I think we were talking a little bit before the show, but Explore mode obviously grants the opportunity, one, to just learn, to just go ahead and kick the proverbial tires in the dungeon, figure out how arc attrition works, which we can see here in just a second. But for folks like myself who do really enjoy running dungeons, and I've only soloed one dungeon, but if I wanted to go ahead and really get all of my strats ready for a solo, maybe a solo flawless run if I'm lucky enough, this seems like a great way to approach that.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, in the Explorer mode, you have some tool tips, so that'll give you some idea of how to navigate these puzzles and also some waypointing to help you get through some tricky areas that you may not be able to find on your own.
Yeah, there's a lot of minutia to always find in these, and it may not always be obvious which way to go. And so you guys, like we were talking about before the show, you actually built some new tech to help kind of establish those breadcrumb trails for the Guardians. All right, we're about to dive on in actually here as well, but very briefly as well, as we go ahead and prepare to land, a brief touch on Ultimatum mode as well. What are some of the key differences between those two experiences?
Sure. So while Explorer mode, of course, is aimed at people who have maybe not as familiar with the dungeons or never really given them a shot, Ultimatum mode is for players who are familiar with the dungeons and are used to a high level of play. So they're going to be our most challenging.
I'm doing Explorer mode, bro. I don't
sort of
give
a power level equivalent of contest mode.
Cool.
So you're going to be facing tougher enemies.
I don't even think I
we're also
have this
using some
dungeon,
activity
bro.
modifiers to
The
sort of
Watcher
craft
one?
the experience and make it a little more challenging,
Happens if
but
you don't have
also
the
just
dungeon.
give you a little
They
bit.
make it free?
Require you to make a few decisions before you go into the dungeon or before you go into an encounter
Right.
that you wouldn't otherwise necessarily be thinking about. So, for example, we're using the not swap activity modifier, which basically means you need to keep one exotic equipped for the duration of an encounter. That's just
the
sort
new
of a
Trials
way
of
of saying,
Nine
like, okay, we need you to
SMG?
really focus on
That kinda
thinking about this
goes
encounter
crazy.
and figuring out how you're going to tackle the challenges associated with it.
Gemini.
And then both Eternity mode and Ultimatum mode are scored on a per encounter basis. So the higher your score in that encounter, the better the loot
The
drop is
better.
going to be. You'll get double perks in different columns and things like that.
Very awesome.
That's all based on deaths. So instead of being based on kills or number of damage phases or things like that, it's basically getting through the encounter with fewer deaths gets you a higher score.
Yeah, be as alive as possible.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right. So what we're really challenging you to do here is we're challenging you to go into this harder mode and not just, execute, but also execute in a way that gets you a higher score, gets you better rolls, and of course in the Ultimatum mode, you'll be getting adept versions of the weapons.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
So when you say adept,
Yes.
I mean, are they just adept, or do they have any special treatment, you might say?
Well, they are in fact adept in name and in functionality, but also they have the new treatment. So all of our weapons have a new visual treatment to them that has 9 iconography on them. And,
That looks
Let's
sick.
see here. Yeah, we got some that are coming up right now.
There we go.
So this is a great example of a sort of baseline drop of new Pacific Epitaph that has the new visual treatment. You can see the 9 iconography on it, and you can also see it's got the color palette at base for it. So all of our weapons that will drop during this event will have a new visual treatment. It'll also have the new event exclusive origin perk, which is Gravity Well. This
Gravity
is a drop on all
Well.
weapons that drop during the event, and is only available in Rite of the Nine. So it'll be exclusive to this event.
Very exciting.
And then I think Guardians out there, we've referred to them as holofoils in the past. So as you're going in, you're doing the harder difficulty, you're earning these adepts. They're going to have the animated holofoil, giving that galaxy
Holofoils.
background,
Dude, that
kind of
looks
showing
sick.
I ascended the mountaintop. I actually went and earned this really dope loot,
Yeah.
and I did it in a way where I got my God rolls.
As someone who's still brave, or rather proudly wears his brave arsenal as much as he can, I cannot wait to go ahead and dive into this. So actually as well, now that we're in Explore mode, checking it out, Rodney, can you tell us some of the key differences, key changes you all made to make this a more accessible experience for new Guardians?
Sure. So one of the things you'll note is that we're using the in-world tooltips to teach you some of the mechanics. So this is something we've seen used in the Nether and in other places in the game so far, and we're continuing to expand that out as a teaching mechanism. So as you are playing through Ultimatum mode, you'll see these tooltips come up, and we have them all over the place anytime a new new mechanic gets introduced.
Got it.
And it basically is a way to, in-world, see, like, okay, this is how this mechanic works. We're also using waypoints. Here's a great example of one of our teaching waypoints that sort of shows you, hey, here's where the path is supposed to go, and kind of direct you in a lot of the places where there are, not as obvious paths through the dungeon, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, like those tooltips and waypoints, we're using those in the encounters to teach you the mechanics. And we do that like the first time you see it, so that later in the dungeon, when you are encountering that mechanic again, you'll have already learned it, and you can take your time and read the tooltips, execute the mechanic at your own pace. One of the things we've done is we've removed darkness phases, and we've reduced the revive timer down to 5 seconds in Explorer mode.
Very nice.
So that there is no real penalty for failure.
Yeah.
So if you're just trying to learn the mechanics and you go in and you want to look at the tooltips and follow the waypoints at your own pace, and maybe you get overwhelmed by enemies or whatever, that's okay, right? Like, you can kind of take your time.
Yeah.
I think one of the things we've seen is that a challenge with a dungeon, in addition to the mechanics and the combat challenge, a lot of it is just you have to sort of learn at a fast pace, right? And so what we're trying to do here is make it so you can kind of learn at your own pace, so that once you're comfortable with these mechanics, then you can jump into either Eternity mode or whatever with other players and know the mechanics, because you've not been sort of pressured to execute perfectly the very first time.
Yeah.
In that first encounter, so you're connecting nodes in a circuit breaker to open the door.
Yeah.
And the waypoints are breadcrumbs, so it's like hit the first circuit and then you see a waypoint for the next in Explore mode. So your ad clear aficionados, they are now learning, or being given the opportunity to learn, oh, this is actually how this pathing works. This is how this mechanic works. So when you bring them in, or when I bring you in.
So why did you stare right at me when you were talking about ad clear aficionados, man?
No reason.
But yeah, it's like when you bring them into the higher difficulties of the mode, then it's like, oh, hey, you remember where those waypoints were? You were able to memorize it. You have this like memory. Now you can come in and execute at a higher level.
I can just come in and wreck.
Yeah, here's actually a good example of one of our shepherding mechanics that we've introduced. So basically, we hear a lot of people say, like, oh, I want to take my friends through the dungeon that have never been before. A lot of these traversal sections can be really challenging. So in this section of Spire of the Watcher, for example, once one player gets to sort of the midpoint of this traversal section, we have these helper platforms that rise up from below, so that a player who's maybe struggling a little bit with that section can follow along and continue to make progress forward, even though they may not have been able to execute the jumping part.
Yeah. Even a warlock can make it through.
I'm
throwing shade. Guardian Games is coming up. I gotta go ahead and get my jabs where I can.
So I think I want to put Nyx on the spot.
Yeah.
As players are going through this, like, we have a bunch of rewards, not just for Explore mode where you're getting the normal drops and all that, but overall through this event. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, you get 5 new emblems.
Emblem for you.
There it is. Yeah, collectors, get ready.
An earnable weapon cosmetic and a hoity-toity event exclusive title that you can get from doing some challenging challenges in Ultimatum mode.
Yeah, it's going to require a lot of participation, I think we were talking about before the show. Like, these are not ones you're going to be able to earn right away. It's going to take some time.
Yeah, it's going to take some blood, some sweat, some tears.
Yeah.
Maybe an ambulance ride, everybody.
On your daily playthroughs, it's like, here are my weapons, but then you have the overarching goal of, like, emblems for the collectors, or the title, so you can show off in the tower, like, I'm the Dungeon Delver. We don't have the name solidified just yet.
It's not locked in.
It'll
not
come.
locked in.
All right, cool.
It'll
Well,
be
I'll tell you what. Speaking of things we do have locked in, so we've taken a little bit of a look at what's here at Act 3. Dylan, I'm going to go ahead and take this chance to put you on the spot. Starting very soon, or if not